Good evening, readers. Kodiak's back with another bedtime story to lull you off to sleep. Tonight, I'm going to be reading The Nightingale and the Rose. Let's begin. Anguished by the lack of red roses in her garden, the young student begged. She said she would dance with me if I brought her red flowers. From her vantage point in the holm oak tree, the nightingale could hear everything. He and she were both staring at the leaves as they pondered. My whole garden is devoid of red roses, he broke down and cried, turning his ordinarily gorgeous eyes of fiery shade. I was sobbing nonstop the whole time. A slew of inconsequential elements determines happiness. My knowledge of wise men is complete, and I know of all their secrets. It is philosophical pursuit of mine, and the absence of the red rose has shaped my life. At long last, I have met a true lover, the nightingale said happily. Even though I didn't know him, I've sang about him every night. I now realize why I have been repeating this story to the stars so often. His hair is as dark as a hyacinth bloom. His lips are vibrant crimson. Passion has made his face paler than a ghost, like the rose of his longing. Ink and pain had left their marks on his brow. He is the crown prince, the young student mumbled, and she gives a ball tomorrow night. And she gives a ball tomorrow night. The company will always be a part of my life. A red rose would be a kind gesture from me, and she would appreciate it. Dance with me until the sun comes up. I swear, I'll never leave your side if you offer me a crimson rose. Her hand on my shoulder, and my arms will wrap her while she does. Your hand will be my hand. Your hand will be mine to hold. On the other hand, my banquet is devoid of any crimson blooms. I'm forced to sit alone on the lawn and watch her pass by because I have no other option. She'll be having a baby. My heart will explode if you don't pay attention to me. Truly, this one is the sole true lover, the nightingale said. What I sing is, I find joy in his misery, and the other way around. There is no question that love is an incredible event. Compared to emeralds, it's a lot more costly and pricey. Gem quality opals are better. Not even pomegranates or pearls can buy it. It's not even set up price market to the general public. There is no way to get it from the merchants. Can't buy it, can't sell it. And it can't be traded for gold on a scale. The young people said, musicians will sit in the gallery and perform. As soon as they start playing their stringed instruments, my love will begin to move. What happens when you combine the sounds of a harp and a violin? She's going to take careful move. The joyous exhalation will be heard when they see her toes refuse to touch the earth. Around her, she'll be surrounded by dresses. She, on the other hand, will not join me on the dance floor because he cried and fell to the ground. I don't have any red flowers to give her, cried uncontrollably as he knelt on the ground, hands clasped over his face. What's the matter? A green lizard yelled. Why is he crying? He was standing there, tail wagging, to be sure. There's a reason behind it. As it flitted from one flight to the next, a butterfly said something sunbeam. In a whisper, Daisy inquired, "Why, indeed?" with emphasis on the second part of the question. The nightingale heard the man's cries for a crimson rose and rushed to his aid. Some of them explained, "For a red rose, or how silly you are." He was well known for his sense of comedy, and the lizard was no exception. Afraid to move from her perch atop an oak, the nightingale thought about love's perplexing paradox while remaining motionless. With a swift stretch of her brown flying wings, she shot into the air like a rocket. She walked through the grove as if it were a shadow, and she walked over the lawn as if it were a shadow. She flew to the rose tree amid the meadow and placed herself on one of its blooms to get her attention. "I will sing you the most beautiful song in the world," she pleaded with him. "Give me a red rose." But the tree swiveled its head side to side. "As the sea's foam and the mountain snow are whiter," it says, "my blossoms are white." Another, "My flowers are white," rang out from the flower's lips. "Talk to my brother, who looks after the garden with the own sundial, since he could be prepared to help you out in this regard." As a result, the nightingale flew off in the direction of the rose tree, which grew near the antique sundial. "This is the most beautiful song I've ever heard. Please give me a red rose, and I'll sing it to you." But the tree swiveled its head to one side. "As the mermaid's hair is yellow, so are my flowers. As are the daffodils before the mower arrives with his scythe, which blossoms in the meadow. My roses are yellow," it answered. It repeated, "My flowers are yellow." "Her hair is as yellow as the amber-throned mermaid's. However, you should speak with my brother, who lives below the student's window, since he may be prepared to provide you with what you want." Once she had taken off, the nightingale flew straight to the rose tree that grew just outside the student's window. "I will sing you the most beautiful song in the world." She pleaded with him, "Please give me a red rose." But the tree once again swiveled its head to one side. "My blossoms are scarlet," it said. It was as crimson as dove's feet and redder than the vast fans of coral in an underwater tunnel. It remarked, "My flowers are red," once again. The color of a dove's feet, in other words, even though my veins and buds have been pinched by freezing temperatures, and the branches have been battered by a storm that has stripped them of their leaves. I will have no roses this year." It broke Nightingale's heart when she murmured, "All I want is a single red rose. Only one crimson rose remains. Is there any hope of receiving it? If so, how do I go about getting it?" In answer, "There is a technique, but I fear not to share it with you," was the tree's response. The nightingale said, "Tell it to me. I'm not afraid," and then fluttered away from the scene. The nightingale said, "To get the crimson rose, you must produce it from a song by moonlight and stain it with your own heart's blood. You'll have to sing to me with your breast pressed against a thorn in order to get my attention. Your heart must be pierced the thorn, and your lifeblood must flow into my veins, where it will become mine. You must sing to me all night long. A red rose costs a lot of life," lamented the nightingale. "A death is a steep price to pay for it." Taking a seat in the lush woodland and watching the moon in the chariot of gold and pearl is a soothing experience. The scents of hawthorn, bluebells, and heather, which grow in the valley and hillside, are all wonderful. There is no comparison between the hearts of bird and man when it comes to love, which is an essential thing in life. She extended her brown wings and climbed into the sky when she was ready to fly. She went over the garden like a shadow, passing through the grove like a shadow. A few minutes after she had left him on the grass, she returned to find him there, still covered in tears, and his lovely eyes still wet from the tears. In a joyous tone, the nightingale said, "Be pleased, you will obtain your red rose. When the moon is shining, I'll build it with song and color with my own heart's blood, because love is more intellectual and powerful than power. I only ask that you be a true lover in return. Even if philosophy is brilliant and strength is strong, in addition to his wings being flame colored, his whole body has a similar hue to a flame. He has a frankincense like scent to his breath, and honey like flavor on his lips." As he sat in the grass, the student tried to listen, but he couldn't make out what the nightingale was saying since all the knowledge he had encountered was in books. A pang of grief passed through the oak tree, which had become connected to the young nightingale who had taken up residence in his limbs. As I moved in closer, he whispered, "Sing me one farewell song. I'll be lonely without you." Consequently, the nightingale sounded like bubbling water from a silver jar as she sang to the oak tree. Following her singing, the student rose and retrieved his notebook and lead pencil from his pocket, ready to jot down some notes. After that, he started taking some notes. Is she capable of feeling? He wondered to himself on the walk out of the forest. I don't think so. In reality, she's just like the rest of the musicians. She's a showboat with no real substance. No matter how much she cared about others, she'd never sacrifice her happiness for others. Everyone understands that art is self centered, but she just considers music. Regardless, her singing voice is very gorgeous, and that's something that can't be argued with. How sad that they don't have any relevance or offer anything to society. To get some peace of mind, he went into his room and slept down on the modest pallet bed he had made for himself. After a while, he fell asleep. A nightingale flew to a rose bush during the full moon and rested her breast on one of the thorns. The moon, as pure as crystal, bowed its head to listen to her singing all night long. In spite of her efforts to sing all night, the thorn in her breast continued to grow, and she felt her lifeblood draining away. For the first part of the song, she sang about the beginning of love in the hearts of a young couple. A beautiful rose blossomed on the tallest branch. The rose tree with its petals opening one after another like a song, like the mists that hang over the river in the morning. It was as silver as the dawn's wings and as pale as the first. The dawn's wings are as silver as the morning's feet. Something about the tree's tallest branch made the rose that bloomed on it seem like a shadow cast by these shadows in a mirror or in a water pool. After hearing the tree's cries, the nightingale moved closer to the thorn. This rose wouldn't last much longer if it weren't for the tree's stern words. "Press closer, small nightingale." Consequently, the nightingale grew in proximity to the thorn, and it increased the loudness of her song as she sang about the beginning of an intense love affair between a man and a maid. The leaves of the rose started to show a hint of pink flush, similar to the blush that occurs on the bridegroom's face as he pressed his lips to hers. The thorn had yet to reach her heart, thus, the rose's heart remained white. Only a nightingale's blood can stain a rose's heart crimson, and the thorn hadn't yet reached hers when she was attacked. When the tree called out to the nightingale, she pressed even closer to the thorn. This rose wouldn't last much longer if it weren't for the tree's stern words. Press closer, small nightingale. To go closer and closer to the thorn, the nightingale felt an unbearably acute anguish shoot through her body till it reached her heart. The more she sang, the wilder her song got, as she told of love cleansed by death, a love that was not extinguished in the grave. The pain was severe, and she sang of love that endures even in death. There was also a reddish hue to this rose that resembled that which hangs in the eastern sky. The colors in the girdle of petals were red, and the center was darker like a ruby. A film began to build over Nightingale's eyes as she sounded more muted and her wings beat. Her voice got silenced, and she felt like something was pinching her neck as she screamed. One more burst of music was performed. After that, White Moon forgot about dawn and stayed up all night long as she heard what it was saying. As soon as the red rose heard this, it trembled and opened its petals to allow the cool morning air in. Echo carries it to her purple cave in the highlands and awakens the sleeping shepherd when she arrives. Once in the river, it was dragged along by reeds until it was finally delivered by the ocean. The nightingale was not responding. Who was already dead and laying in long grass with a thorn in her heart and shouting, "See, look," from the tree. The tree said, "See, look." As the old saying goes, the rose is done now. The student opened his window a little after noon and took a peek outdoors. A red rose he pointed to and remarked, "Here it is." It made him cry. Why, what a magnificent stroke of good fortune. In all his years of life, he kneeled on the ground and picked it up before commenting, "It is so exquisite that I am sure it has a long Latin name." He kneeled on the ground and picked it up. After that, he hurried to the professor's house as soon as possible, removing his cap, grabbing the rose. The professor's daughter could be seen sitting, winding blue silk onto a reel in the doorway, while her little dog slept on her lap. After hearing the teacher say, "You stated that you would dance with me if I brought you a red rose," the student screamed, "You said that, and here it is. The rose with the most intense hue of red known to man. It will tell you how much I love you while we dance together tonight." But the young woman frowned when she heard this. "I am scared it will not match my clothing," she replied. "The Chamberlain's nephew has sent some diamonds, and everyone knows that jewels cost more than flowers," she said. Irate. "Well, you're incredibly ungrateful," he said before throwing the rose into the street, where it landed in the gutter and a cartwheel ran over it. "Well, on my word, you're rather disrespectful." The young lady screamed, "Ungrateful! I'll tell you something. You're being quite rude, and who are you anyway?" "Nobody except a student who was in the room." When she said, "Why, I don't suppose you even have silver buckles on your shoes like the Chamberlain's nephew," she got up from her chair and stepped into the house before continuing her remark. The student proceeded on his journey, saying, "What a silly thing love is. The value of philosophy as a study of metaphysics is greater than the value of philosophy as a study of logic, because logic proves nothing, and it forms one of the things that will never happen and makes one believe in things that are not real. As a result, I am considering returning to a philosophy and studying metaphysics instead." He retreated to a dust-strewn copy of an old book, which he began reading. Good night.